Among the different stories encountered in the manga format, Berserk is one of those which, without being exactly mainstream, is known and referred to outside its own sphere. From Dark Souls to the shared meme on social media of a certain horse, while not forgetting the homage of Final Fantasy XIV players after his passing, Kentaro Miura's creation inspired many, ignited debates, brought awe. Awe because beyond the tale told, the fantastic characters and themes, one aspect of Berserk that defines its greatness is the art style that cannot be qualified by anything other than grandiose. Still, amidst many fiery illustrations, there is one in particular that I appreciate. One which embodies the story in its entirety. There, towards the end of the 51st chapter, lies the greatest panel in Berserk, the standoff between Guts and Griffith in a winter's morning. There's nothing flashy about it, really, but even from a first glance, the panel gives a strong feeling of serenity. You could almost hear the early birds chirping all around and a subtle gust of wind cooling your skin when looking at the scene, and this, despite the obviously imminent fight between the two parties. Speaking of what's between the two parties, we can see plains, mountains, a city. They are in the background, but from our point of view, the effect they give is that an entire world separates the characters. Let's talk about them. Guts' appearance reflects most of what he has been throughout the story up to this point. A soldier. That being said, he stands firm. His gaze is unfazed, calm, and we can see through it that he is more mature and equally determined. This determination finds strength in his newly acquired resolve to leave the band in order to find his own dream. Behind him is the city, full of people who, in this instance, seem to back him up, or at least to be represented or defended by him. At the same time, you could argue Guts is going the other way, leaving them as the lone wolf he will be for a while after this confrontation. Then there is this comically long sword. It is not the Dragon Slayer yet, but it sets the premises, saying how ridiculous it looks. On the top of the sword shines a bright sun, flashing as if the rays of light emanate from the blade, risen towards the sky. And it is strange to notice that the branches of the tree in the middle are so plunged in their shadow, they start to resemble dark tendrils going against the sword. Keep in mind, the bulk of this first shade isn't on Guts' side. It is way closer to Griffith. There are many details about the left part of the panel that feel so heavy in what they imply, it is difficult to not admire the artist, to have been able to incorporate them without a single hint of dissonance. But let's begin with the man who, allegedly, did nothing wrong. His posture almost seems nonchalant, in an attire more refined than Guts's. The image of himself he gives is like the polar opposite of a man used to the battlefield, yet his eyes. where guts shone in determination, his eyes like pity and compassion. They throw a glare of cruelty. They are fierce, cold, harsh. They are the only part of him allowed to show his emotions when faced with the possibility of losing guts. His mouth, barely visible, will never expose that vulnerability. Earlier, we noted that there was a city with plenty of people behind guts. Griffith doesn't have that privilege though. Beside the mercenary camp, almost lost in the distance and so mixed with the tree, it became a part of the woods below, it seems. There is another building, is close to, a tower, higher than any other, lonelier than any other. On a funny note, this tower suspiciously looks like a phallus, which, any joke aside, correlates with the next action Griffith will take and regret. Looking back at the character, his word looks attuned to the impression Griffith projects. Refined, yet sharp, cunning even. This time though, the blade heads more towards the ground, right in front of the tree embedded in darkness, as if it was about to cut it, or to bow down to it. Is it alluding to Kianishka? Maybe. The darkness of the world itself? Who knows? His stance indicates his body is more exposed to the sunlight, yet there is a lot more shadows around him, exactly like his persona of the hero of Falconia that hides a spawn of evil desires in Femto. Speaking of Femto, I would like to point out an interesting display. Observe the trees right behind Griffith. Don't they eerily look like fingers? And the stone beneath almost like a thumb rising from the soil. Oh, I can hear you from here saying, but Fallen, that will only represent 4 fingers. Yes, but take a look at Griffith again in the middle of those trees. By squeezing it just a little, would they make a nice 5th finger for the hand? Thank you so much for listening to my little expose. It is the first time I make a video like this, and I strongly desired to share my love for this drawing in particular and for Berserk in general. You know, people love to use the term symbolism, but even though it does apply to what I tried to show through this illustration, I do not like using that word too much. It sounds too mechanical. The ability to assemble so many concepts in a single, coherent, and enjoyable entity, I'd rather call it poetry. And that is the point I wanted to establish. That poetry is a beauty that can be found everywhere. In a poem, of course, in a song, in a manga panel. If only we let ourselves see it for what it is, and not for what we expect it to be.